Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about daily routines. Daily routines are all of the things that most people do every day on a regular basis. They're the things you do from the moment you wake up in the morning until you fall asleep at night. And we'll talk about those two things as well as we go through this lesson. It's interesting that as you go through your week and as you go through each day, there are things that you just do repeatedly, regularly, things that you do all the time. Notice I used a number of different ways to describe actions that we just do over and over again as human beings. So, daily routines are all of the things that you do on a regular basis, pretty much every day of your life. The very first thing you do in the morning is you wake up. When you are asleep and when you go from the process of sleeping to being awake, that is what I call waking up. What time did you wake up this morning? I woke up at 6:30 this morning. So you're sleeping, and then when you go from the state of sleep to being in a state of wakefulness, those are big words, we say that you wake up. I usually wake up around 6:30. On the weekends, I wake up around 7 o'clock. That's what time I usually wake up in the morning. But this is a little bit different. For me, there's a difference between to get up and to get out of bed and to wake up. So I wake up, but I don't always get up right away. Sometimes I wake up and I'll just kind of lay there for a little bit and I'll think about all of the things I need to do that day. Sometimes I'll wake up and I'll look at the clock and I'll think to myself, I'll get up in 5 minutes. I'll just lay here and think for a little bit first. So to get up or to get out of bed, that's the time where you go from being in bed to actually standing up, at least in my opinion. Now, English speakers sometimes use these in a more general way, but for me, I usually say, I woke up at 6:30, I got out of bed at 6:45. That does happen sometimes. And then usually it's a good idea to make the bed. To make the bed, this means you put all of the blankets back nice and smooth. Maybe you fluff up the pillows a little bit. But when you get out of bed, usually the first thing you do is you make the bed. So instead of leaving all the blankets all crumpled up or in a pile, you kind of nicely pull them tight and you make the bed so that it looks and is ready for you to sleep in it later that day. One of the first things many people do in the morning is they use the bathroom or they go to the bathroom. So in the morning when I get up, after I get out of bed and after I make my bed, I usually use the bathroom. Now this does mean that I'm using the bathroom. I'm not going into any detail about what I'm doing in there, but it does mean that I'm using the toilet, okay? So I would say I'm going to go to the bathroom and then I'm going to go downstairs, or I'm going to go use the bathroom. I'm going to use the bathroom and then I'm going to go downstairs. So yes, in the morning, a lot of people usually use the bathroom, not always right away, but at some point in the morning, you probably have to use the bathroom, especially if you had a lot to drink the night before. When you get up in the morning, you might have to go to the bathroom or use the bathroom right away. And then if you're really good and you follow a good routine, you might be able to exercise or to work out. So exercise is a general term. So that could involve lifting weights or running or doing anything that's good for your body. But you might say, after I get up in the morning, I like to work out. I like to go for a run. I like to go for a walk. So I like to go for a walk. Interestingly, in English, if I say I'm going to go walk, or if I say I'm going to go for a walk, when you say go for a walk, it sounds more like exercise, okay? I'm going to run to the store. That sounds like you're just going to run to the store because you want to get there fast. But if you say I'm going to go for a run, it usually means exercise. So sometimes you can see this, I'm trying to kind of go in order. Your daily routine might be in a slightly different order, and it might not include this one. But usually in the morning after I get up and after I use the washroom or use the bathroom, I like to exercise. I like to go for a walk. Some people like to work out. They like to lift weights. Some people like to go for a run. And if you have a dog, if you have pets, there's a few things you might do. You might take the dog for a walk. Sometimes it's good to take the dog for a walk in the morning or to walk the dog. There's a couple ways of saying it in the morning. So I get up early because I need to take the dog for a walk, or I need to take my dog for a walk, or I get up early because I need to walk my dog, or I need to walk the dog in the morning. So dogs need exercise too. This is how dogs get exercise. Their owners take the dog for a walk, or they walk the dog. And if you have a cat, it's a little simpler. You might just let the cat out. You could say, oh, I'm going to go downstairs and have a cup of coffee, and I'm going to let the cat out. So you might have a cat. The cat might sleep in the house at night. And in the morning, you make a point of opening the little cat door or opening the normal door to let the cat out. Maybe the cat needs to explore the neighborhood a little bit. So in the morning, another thing you might do is you might let the cat out. And then you might feed your pet. So you might take your dog for a walk, and then you might feed your dog, or you might let your cat out. And when your cat scratches on the door because they want to come back in, you might then feed your cat. You might feed your fish. You might feed a bird. Maybe you have a pet bird. But sometimes one of the things people do as their daily routine is they feed their cat or they feed their dog. And then if you have kids or other people in the house, sometimes you will wake up the kids. So I'm a parent. I have children. Sometimes my children get up on their own, but sometimes I need to wake up the kids. Sometimes I need to knock on the doors of their bedrooms and say, hey, time to get up. So it depends on how old they are. My kids are old enough now that they set their own alarms. They set an alarm clock. And so they usually get up themselves. But if one or two of them isn't up, I sometimes need to wake up the kids. I need to go and make sure that they're awake so that they don't miss the bus and so that they can go to school. Maybe you have a roommate that you need to wake up sometimes. If you don't have kids, that can happen too. And then you make breakfast. So there's a difference between making breakfast and eating breakfast. In the morning, after I have done some other things, I go to the kitchen to make breakfast. I like to make breakfast usually fairly early in the morning. If I go for a walk, I go for a walk without having eaten breakfast. There's a complex sentence for you. But when I get back, I like to make breakfast. I usually fry some eggs. I might have some toast. I might have some oatmeal, but it's nice to make breakfast. You could say cook breakfast. I like to cook breakfast, but in English, we use the word make a lot when we're talking about the kitchen. We'll say things like, oh, I'm going to make some toast. I'm going to make some eggs. I'm going to make breakfast. I'm going to make waffles. And then, of course, what do you do after you make breakfast? You eat breakfast. I like to eat breakfast right away after I make it. I like my eggs hot. If I have toast, I like my toast hot as well. And you can also use the verb to have. You can say, oh, I'm going to have breakfast in a few minutes. Do you want me to make you an egg? I might say that to Jen. Or, Jen, when are you going to have breakfast? Or when are you going to eat breakfast? The sentences are completely interchangeable. But it simply means to sit down and to eat the food that you made. And then after that, I like to have a shower. I like to take a shower. There's two ways to say it. You can even say, I'm going to grab a shower. So we use the English verb to grab for a lot of weird things. You could even say, oh, I'm going to grab some breakfast, then I'm going to grab a shower. It's very informal though. Normally I would say, I'm going to have breakfast at 7. I'm going to take a shower at 7:30, or I'm going to have a shower at 7:30. And of course, a shower is water, and you use soap to clean yourself so that when you go to work that day, you smell fresh and clean. Now, if you like to have a bath or take a bath, it's the same verb. If you like to sit in the bath, you could say, oh, I'm going to eat breakfast, and then I'm going to have a bath, or I'm going to take a bath. And then there's a whole bunch of other things you do depending on who you are. You might put on makeup. You might brush your teeth. You might shave. You might comb your hair. You might brush your hair. By the way, this is a comb and this is a brush. So there are a lot of things you do, usually right before you go to work or go to school if you leave the house. You might comb your hair, brush your teeth. You might cut your fingernails. You might put on makeup, etc., etc. That's why I put etc. up here, because there are many things that you do at that time of the day. And then you get dressed. So in the morning, after I've had a shower, I like to get dressed. So this morning as well, I got dressed about half an hour ago. I put on this white shirt. I put on my watch. I put on my wedding ring. So notice, to get dressed is the general term. You get dressed in the morning. But when you talk about individual items, you use the verb to put on. So I put on my shirt, I put on my pants, I put on my socks, I put on my underwear first, I put on my watch, I put on my ring. And so now I am dressed. So that is definitely one of the things that you do when you talk about your daily routine. You get dressed, you put on your clothes. After you get dressed, you will most likely make a lunch. I like to make a lunch every day. I like to pack a lunch every day. These mean the same thing, okay? So if I say after I have a shower, I go to the kitchen and I make a lunch, or I go to the kitchen to pack a lunch, it means I'm going to make a sandwich. I might get a banana. I might get some fruit or vegetables and put them in a lunch bag, and I will take them to work, because I don't like to buy lunch. I like to make a lunch. I like to pack a lunch. Interesting thing with English, if it's lunchtime, you would say, I'm going to make lunch. But when you get a lunch ready in the morning to take to work or to take to school, you say you make a lunch or you pack a lunch. And then you need to grab your things. This is a general term, and I do use it every morning. Like, I grab my phone, I grab my keys, I grab my wallet. I make sure that I put on my wedding ring and put on my watch, but I grab my laptop, I grab my lunch because I made my lunch earlier or I packed it. So I grab all of my things and then I get in my vehicle. And that's exactly how you would say it. I'm leaving in 5 minutes. I'm just going to grab my things and then I'm going out to the van. You'll hear me say that to my children. And then I head to work or I go to work. You could use either of these. Both mean that you are basically going from your house or home to your place of work. It might be school as well, but you might say, I'm going to head to work. Jen might say to me, what time are you going to head to work today? What time are you going to go to work? And I'll just say, oh, I'm going to head to work today. I'm going to head to work at 10. Yesterday, I headed to work at around 8 in the morning. So when you head to work or go to work, it means the same thing. It means that you are basically leaving your house and going to work. And maybe you need to go to school. I know some of you are still students, so not everyone will be going to work every day. Some of you will go to school in order to learn things. If you're a parent, you might need to drop the kids off. We also sometimes say that you need to drop off the kids. Basically, my kids go on a bus. My younger kids go on a bus. My older kids come to school with me. But if they need to be at school at a certain time, I might need to drop them off. So to drop off the kids means to bring your kids to school, which, by the way, you could say that too. You could say, I need to bring my kids to school tomorrow morning, or I need to drop the kids off at school. It just means to give them a ride. And then you might need to drive to work. Maybe you drive by yourself. Maybe you carpool, which is when you drive to work with other people. You can also use carpool as a verb. You can say, I carpool to work, which means that you go to work with other people, maybe to save money because gas is so expensive right now. This might be required in order to have a balanced budget and not run out of money. You might need to drive to work with other people. Or you might take the bus, you might take the train, you might take the subway, you might take the metro. We use the verb to take in most of these situations. I take the bus to work, I take the train to work, I take the subway, I take the metro. Now again, a bus is definitely this vehicle here. A train is on a track with a whole bunch of cars, and it's usually above ground. A subway is usually below ground, and a metro is just another name for a subway. It really depends on the city you're in. I know in Toronto, they have the GO train. and they have the subway. So there's two different ways to travel. But instead of driving to work, you might take the bus, you might take the train, you might take the subway, you might take the metro. And then you get to work. I find this is a funny phrase though. You could say, Bob, what time do you get to work? And I could say, I like to get to work at 9 a.m. or I like to get to work at 10:30. But if you say to someone, get to work, it means you want them to start working. Hopefully I didn't confuse you there. What I'm trying to talk about here is we use the phrase to get to work, to arrive at work in the same way. Joe likes to get to work at 8 a.m. Joe likes to arrive at work at 8 a.m. Both of those sentences have the same meaning. It just means the moment you actually walk in the door at work. And then you need to say hi. It's just really nice. If you have coworkers, after you get to work, after you arrive at work, it's nice to say hi. It's nice to say, hello, how's it going? Pretty good. How are you? I think if you watched my video earlier this week, you'll realize that most of the simple greetings are the greetings we use. When I get to work, I say hi. I say hello. I say, how's it going? I say, how are you doing today? I say, how are you? Those are all just very common. Probably, how's it going? According to the stats I kept, how's it going is probably one of the most common ways to say hi. Hey, how's it going? Pretty good. How are you? That's your standard English greeting at work. But when you get to work, it's nice to say hi to everyone. And then I've jumped forward in the day. Obviously, you're going to do some work, but at a certain point in the day, you're going to take a break or you're going to take a coffee break. So usually in a normal workplace around 10 a.m., you'll have a 10 or 15 minute break. This is pretty standard in North America. You start work at 7 or 8 or 9, and midway through the morning, you take a coffee break or you take a break. We've called them coffee breaks, but not everyone drinks coffee anymore, but it can still be a common term. When I was a construction worker, we would take a coffee break at 10 a.m. and at 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon. It was really nice. And then at a certain part of the day, you're going to eat lunch or you're going to have lunch. You can use both verbs again. At my work, we actually eat lunch at 11:45. We have lunch at 11:45. We have an early lunch at school, at my work. So if you are someone who likes to pack a lunch, if you like to make a lunch and you bring it to work, then at lunchtime, you will eat lunch or you will have lunch. So both of those are common, very common verbs. If you were to ask someone, you could say, hey, what time are you going to eat lunch today? Or what time are you going to have lunch today? Do you want to eat lunch together? Do you want to have lunch together? And then here we are. We're at the end of the work day already to finish work. At a certain point in your day, maybe at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, depending on where you work, you will finish work. It's really nice to finish work at the same time every day. If someone said to you, hey, do you want to go out after work? And if they didn't know when you were done, they might say, what time do you finish work? And you could say, oh, I finish work at 4 o'clock. Or today I'm not going to finish work until 5. So basically, this just means the end of your workday. And then it's nice to say goodbye. So when you get to work, it's nice to say hello. It's nice to say, how's it going to people. But when you leave the workplace, it's nice to say goodbye to your colleagues as well. You might do this by saying, see you tomorrow. That's probably the most common way to say goodbye. You could say goodbye or you could say bye. But I think for me, and this might be different in other places in the world, when I leave work, I almost always say, see you tomorrow. Or if it's Friday, I'll say, see you Monday. Or have a good weekend. Like later today on a Friday, I might say, bye everyone, have a good weekend. I might say that as my way of saying goodbye to my colleagues. And then if you have kids, you might need to pick up the kids. So if you are someone who earlier used the phrase drop off the kids, if you had to drop the kids off at school, or if you had to drop off the kids at school, a couple ways of saying it, you might need to pick up the kids at the same time. or sorry, at a later time. You might have to go and you might need to pick up the kids from school or from daycare or from wherever they are. And then if you have fun colleagues and if you have extra time, you might go out after work. I don't do this very often. I do this maybe twice a year. Twice a year, someone at work might say, "Hey, Bob, we're going to go out after work. We're going to have beer and wings. Do you want to come with?" And then some colleagues and myself, we might go out after work to have a little snack, to have something to drink. I used to do this a lot more when I was younger, but I think when you get older and you have kids and you have a lot of stuff to do, a lot of errands, you don't do this as often. But younger people often will go out after work, maybe once a month. They'll say, "Hey, we're going to go out and get some food. Do you want to come?" And usually Bob the Canadian says no. I'm a boring colleague, I think. I should go out after work with my colleagues more often. And then you go home, plain and simple. This is how you say it. Okay, I'm done work. I'm going to go home. At the end of the workday, when I finish work, I go home. It's really nice to go home after a long day at work. So simply the opposite of going to work or heading to work is that you're going to go home. In fact, you could say, "I'm going to head home." Okay. I might be on the phone with Jen and I might say, "Hey, I just have a few things left to do at work and then I'm going to head home." Okay. So I'll see you in 15 minutes or something like that. So to go home at the end of the day, the thing you do when you are all done your workday. And then of course you might, before you go home, you might need to run errands. You might need to run some errands. So this is the act of doing all the little things in life that you don't do every day, but you do quite often. You need to get groceries. You need to get your mail. You might need to pick up your laundry if it's at the if it's at the dry cleaner. I don't do that. I do my own laundry at home. You might need to pick your dog up. Maybe you bring your dog to a place that takes care of it during the day. We don't do that, but some people do. You might need to just do a few errands. You might need to go to the bank. You might need to do all of the typical things that you might need to do throughout the week. So to get changed. When I get home, I like to get changed. I wear a shirt with a collar to work, and I wear like dress pants, they're called. I don't wear jeans to work. But in order to feel comfortable, I like to just wear jeans and a t-shirt. So when I get home, I like to get changed. To get changed means to put different clothes on. I think this is a very common thing for people. People come home from work, maybe they're wearing a tie or a dress or a skirt. They're wearing some very formal clothing. And when they get home, in order to relax, they like to get changed. So they just like to, we say it this way too sometimes. I just like to throw on jeans and a t-shirt and sit on the couch and have a cup of tea. So this guy, I imagine, came home from work and decided he wanted to get changed. So he put on a t-shirt, a comfy shirt, and a pair of jeans. And then I like to make supper or I like to make dinner. Again, I use these words the same way. Jen and I usually make dinner around 4:30. We like to make supper around 4:30. And then we like, oh, that's the wrong slide. This is the one. We like to eat dinner or eat supper around 5 or 5:30. So to make supper means to cook supper. You could also say that. But generally we use the word make because it's a very general. It's a very general word. Usually every day, Jen will make supper around 4:30 or 5. Most days, Jen makes supper in the winter. But in the summer, when Jen's busy on the farm, I usually make supper. I'm usually the one who makes dinner. But it's to prepare food. That's what that would mean. And then sometimes you order takeout or you get takeout. So in Canada, we would call this takeout. We might even say you might order delivery, which means you get a pizza delivered to your house. Takeout is when you make a phone call or you order online and then you go to the restaurant and pick your food up in boxes and then you take it home to eat it. So you might order takeout or get takeout. I think in Britain they call it takeaway, but in Canada, in my area at least, we call it takeout. Sometimes Jen and I will order takeout or we'll get takeout and then we'll eat restaurant food at home. We talked about eating dinner and eating supper already, so I'll move on. And then you need to do the dishes, or you need to wash the dishes. Some people are lucky and they have a dishwasher. I do not have a dishwasher. So after supper every night, we do the dishes. So that means we put soap and water in the sink. We put the dishes in, and then we wash and scrub them and rinse them and dry them. So after we eat supper, we will do the dishes, a very common activity that many people do after they eat. You need to, I think they call this the washing up in Britain. Don't quote me on British English though. I'm just going by what I hear when I watch British television. But we would say to do the dishes or to wash the dishes. So plates, cups, spoons, forks. And then to clean up the house. We don't do this every night. We actually do this more on the weekends. But usually we will sweep the floor. When we do the dishes, usually one person will sweep the floor and another person will wipe the table off or wipe off the table. On a Saturday, though, we will vacuum and we will do other types of cleaning. But often after supper, we will clean up the house. We will just tidy things up a little bit. And then maybe you want to unwind. So this is an English verb that means to relax. So you might just sit in a chair and read a book. You might just sit and chat for a little bit. But to unwind usually means to relax after work. Okay, so after work, after you've done some chores and some errands, when you finally sit down at the end of the day, you might sit down to unwind, which just means to relax a little bit. Usually by 6 o'clock or 6:30 at night, especially in the winter, I'm able to just sit down and to unwind a little bit. I'm able to sit down and relax. It's a nice feeling. And you might sit down to watch the news. Maybe you're someone who likes to watch the news. I used to watch the news a lot. I don't watch the news as much anymore, but this was something that I used to do quite regularly after supper every night. And we still do a bit, but I don't think as much as we used to. Maybe you like to read a book. Maybe that's one of the things you do to unwind. You take some time to sit and read a book at night, which of course I think you know what reading a book is. Maybe you like to watch some TV. You might want to watch some Netflix. You might want to watch some YouTube. All of those phrases are very common. Sometimes I sit on my computer because I want to watch some YouTube videos, or I want to watch Netflix, or I want to watch another streaming service like Amazon Prime. But sometimes you just want to watch TV or watch some TV, to watch Netflix or some Netflix, or to watch YouTube videos or to watch some YouTube videos. So hopefully you heard all those variations there. And maybe you want to check social media. Maybe you really, really enjoy grabbing your phone at night. There's the verb grab again. I'm just going to grab my phone and check Instagram. I'm just going to grab my phone and check Facebook. We use the verb to check a lot when we're talking about social media. You could also say that someone's on social media a lot. Like, he's, if you're talking about teenagers, she's on social media all the time. That's the same as, looking at Instagram or Facebook or one of the other main social medias, apps. And then eventually you're going to say goodnight. So you might say goodnight to your kids. You might say goodnight to your spouse. You might say goodnight to someone on the phone. Maybe you phone your mom or dad every night to say goodnight. But one of the last things you do at the end of the day is that you say goodnight to people. And then you're going to get ready for bed. So when you get ready for bed, this involves maybe putting on pajamas. This involves maybe doing things like you're going to use the bathroom or go to the bathroom. It includes things like maybe you're going to brush your teeth. There's a variety of things that you do to get ready for bed. I know because I'm old, one of the things I do is I take my medication. So I have to take a pill every day, and I do that at night. It's one of the things I do when I'm getting ready for bed. So when I am done, when I'm going to go to bed, I usually get changed. I'm not going to describe what I wear to bed, but I get ready for bed by getting changed. I brush my teeth. I usually take my pill. I usually go to the bathroom or use the bathroom. Those are all the things that I do when I am getting ready for bed. So one of the last things you do is you get ready for bed. And then you get in bed. So you can say you get in bed, you go to bed, you get into bed. All of those are equally common in English. At the end of your day, you might also, by the way, have a shower or take a shower at night. It can depend on what kind of work you do during the day. When I'm teaching, I have a shower in the morning. In the summer, when I'm not teaching and I work on the farm, I have a shower before I go to bed. So it depends how dirty your work is. When you work on a farm, you get dirty. Your hands get dirty. Your neck gets dirty. Everything gets dirty because you're working outside. So you might have a shower at the end of the day. And then you're going to get in bed, get into bed, go to bed. And then you need to set your alarm clock, or you need to set your alarm. I still have an old-fashioned alarm clock. Most people these days just set an alarm on their phone, but you need to set your alarm, or you need to set your alarm clock. If you need to get up early the next morning, maybe you don't, maybe it's the weekend, then you want to make sure that your alarm is not set, because the worst thing for me is when the alarm clock goes off at 6:30 on a Saturday morning and I don't need to get up. But sometimes you need to set your alarm clock, or you need to set your alarm. I don't know who gets up at 9 a.m., but that must be really nice. And then the very, very last thing that you will do is you will fall asleep. We sometimes say go to sleep. Like I go to sleep at 10 p.m. or I didn't. Yeah, I think fall asleep is the actual act of going from being awake to being asleep or to sleeping. So I think the very, very last thing that most people do in their day is they will fall asleep. And then hopefully you don't toss and turn. Hopefully you don't have nightmares or bad dreams. Hopefully after you fall asleep, you just drift off and have beautiful dreams about awesome things in life. That would be really cool. But definitely the last thing you do in your day, in your daily routine, is to fall asleep.